Rice, welcome into the Horse Racing Show. Thank you for tuning in this maddening month that is March. Basketball going on. Will it be Kansas or Dayton or Kentucky or Baylor or San Diego State, Seton Hall, Louisville, Maryland?
Did you say Dayton?
I said Dayton. Keep an eye on them. The Flyers will be in the Elite Eight, I do believe. But anyway, who's going to win the Derby? Well, there's about 7, 8, 9 horses out there right now. Nobody has really jumped right out of the pack just this moment. Mike Battaglia sets the odds at Churchill Downs. He is setting the early Derby line for the future betting right now. He'll join us in just a few minutes. Later on from the Haggard Equine Medical Institute, he is world-renowned veterinarian Dr. Stuart Brown will join us as well. With us again is Ben Chaffins on lead guitar. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Kenny.
And with me here is our ace researcher, Mr. Thomas Kenny. Well, we talk about this Derby, and I mean, there's been some decent payouts, but we haven't had too many, minus last year. Crazy money coming in.
Last year threw a wrench into the mix.
Yeah, it was the one that was what'd you say the $2 exact it was or something in there?
The $2 superfecta.
Superfecta, yeah.
For last year's Derby, if you hit it, would win you over $50,000.
That's what you want to do. And the way it worked out last year, you probably could have just picked numbers. I've not met the person that picked Country House. I've had people tell me I wanted to see their ticket. They wouldn't show me. If I had a 65-1 horse, I would take pictures of that ticket and post it and show it, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely.
What are some of the other payouts we've had recently in the Derby? Because, it's run pretty true to form. We'll talk to Mike about that in just a minute.
Well, in 2018 with Justify, that's not only a Baffert horse, but people knew he was something special even before the Derby.
Yeah.
So that was a $7.80 payout on a $2 bet.
Yeah, that's about right, yeah.
2017 was $11.40.
Yeah.
2016, you might be surprised to find it was even less than Justify at $6.60.
Yes.
And then in 2015, American Pharaoh also was a $7.80 payout on a $2 bet.
What a bargain it was back then. Well, you know what it's going to show is this. I mean, where the favorites have been coming in, it's not like they've been crazy favorites. Not like they've been even money or odds-on favorites, but you have a better indication, I do believe.
And even if you're thinking back to last year, minus the disqualification, the favorite finished first.
That's right. Maximum Security was the favorite who did finish first. And that's the way he'll always be remembered. Not the winner, but he finished first. Couple of guys that always finish first. What a segue there, huh? Mike Battaglia, the man that sets the odds for the Derby, joins us next. Later on from the Haggard Equine Medical Institute, Dr. Stuart Brown. You're listening to the Horse Racing Show. Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. I'm Kenny Rice. Thank you for tuning in again this week. This is a great friend and one of the most respected, and not just respected, but well-liked people in the business, Mike Battaglia, who sets the morning.
Not a lot of people like me. I'm not. They like me because I hang around with you.
Well, I drop your name every chance I can. How far do we go? When I was first started covering horse racing, you were so helpful to me. Like in 1980, when I arrived on the TV scene in Lexington, I remember you were one of the first guys I met in the horse business.
I know, and we used to. I used to love just coming on with you, and I would stay in Lexington, which I never did, just to go on and do something with you on the news.
Well, we had Mike. I don't know how you were on more than any other horse racing person I know. Probably, I only interviewed maybe Rick Pitino more than you. I don't know, but it was something like that. But, I'm going to tell this story right quick. This is how smart this guy is. Mike can put numbers together. I'm going like 2 times 2 plus 3. And so we're doing the show, and we'd already taped our Kentucky Derby special. You know where I'm going with this. And I even remember the year. It was the Unbridled Summer Squall Derby in 1990.
Okay.
And we are down now, and that's how you figure up segments in TV, as we do on this radio show and podcast, is that you say, okay, you got X number of minutes left in the segment. So we'd already put the whole show together. We're going to have the close, the grand finale is Mike's going to join us in the studio, and he's going to tell us who to bet on in the Derby. And so we're going through, this segment went 4:18. This segment went 7 minutes, 22 seconds, etc. And we'd just gotten a calculator. And the calculator that added up minutes and seconds to tell you, instead of us trying to carry over 42 seconds plus 38 seconds. And Mike beat the calculator. We came down to where they added it up, and Mike said, okay, you need whatever the time was. Let's say we got a 6 minute, 20 seconds to close. And they were stunned. And I'm still stunned. All these years, I still remember.
Anymore. That was lucky. It just happened to be that everything was easy adding. I'm telling you, that was just luck.
No, it was not luck. It was very difficult, and you beat the computer. You could be like on, and you could be on Shazam too, by the way, because nobody knows any more music than Mike does. I watched that show.
Yeah, but the problem is, my musical knowledge stopped after 1969.
Well, in my opinion, music stopped about 1982 or 3. But yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of luck, this Kentucky Derby thing happens to be coming up again the first Saturday in May, as it seems to always do. And Mike is the man that sets the morning line for the Derby. And as we were talking about earlier, people getting excited about basketball pools. Are you going to jump in again? Who are you going to pick to win the tournament? There's also early betting on the Kentucky Derby, which has been around for a while now. You kind of take it for granted. I remember when it first started, that was a big deal. That was a big deal. Not being in Vegas, you could always do the Derby future book in Vegas. But that was a big deal, wasn't it, Mike, when it first started at Churchill Downs, this early pool?
Yeah, and it's caught on. People love it, but I think I've made one future bet. To me, I always say it's tough enough to pick the winner, on Derby Day. They're betting 6 months before now and 3 months before. I just did the pool for this coming Friday, starting another pool, and it's tough to do. It's tough to pick a winner when you don't know who's running in the race.
I know, and right now, who can say who's going to run? I mean, we've had some surprises, good and bad, and I'd say that as many trainers, there's maybe a handful of guys that are locked in, and they say, I'm really pointing to the Derby. There's also probably 2 or 3 more that thinks, I don't know what happened, and what do we do again now?
Yeah. This is when it starts counting. I mean, we've got a few horses already with 50 points, and that kind of locks them in.
Yeah.
The 50 points will do it. That'll get them in. So we've got a couple of horses like that, but past that, it's still wide open. We don't know what's going to happen with the rest of them, and that's why it's so much fun. From here on in, I'm not part of the selection committee, but they picked 23 horses. And then, of course, we have number 24, which is the field. But just to pick those 23 horses is tough. And they do a great job, the selection committee on this. I don't know all of them, but the guys that are in it do a great job. Baffert has 4 of the 23. I can tell you that. And a couple other guys have 2, Steve Asmussen, Peter Yurton, and Patrick Bean Cohn has 2. Other than that, it's nobody else. It's a Baffert. The Derby is becoming, Baffert has been ruling in the Derby.
Baffert could start a mule, and it would probably be like, 12-1. I mean,
Yeah. He's got, they made Nadal the favorite back in February.
That surprised me, by the way.
I mean, I had him like 12-1 just because of it, but he went off favorite at 8-1.
Yeah.
And even after he ran that day, he ran the day the pool closed, and I was not impressed. He won by about a half a length, right at the wire, and he ran a gutty race, but he's at a 6.5 and a 7 furlong race, and I made him 10-1 in March. I wouldn't take 10-1 on him, but it's Baffert. I mean, he's just like I said, he's got 4 horses. The power of Baffert is people, and you have to look at it because he is so good with getting horses ready. I'll tell you what, and it has nothing to do with the Derby. This is the Oaks, but we did a future bet on the Oaks for the only one we do for the Oaks. That's coming out on Friday. Again, 23 horses, and then 24 is the field. They sent me the PPs, and one of them was a first-time starter. I'm going, what the heck? So it's a horse called Gamine, and it's Baffert. And so I texted Darren Rogers. I said, Darren, what's going on? I said, I can see it's Baffert, but he sent me the work on this horse and the hype. The horse it's going to enter today, and he's going to run. She is going to enter today and run Friday. Uh-huh. She's a first-time starter. I made her 15-1. I mean, you should see. I watched. She's working like crazy. She worked against another Baffert horse named Gingham, who's already graded stakes place, right. And she just blew him away. Her away. It's 2 fillies. She blew the other filly away, the stakes place filly, and she's going to run Friday. So we'll see. This is going to be the hottest thing that ever hit the track, I would think, on Friday. She'll probably be 2-5 or 1-5 on Friday. But we'll see, because this is going to be a prep for, I guess, the Santa Anita Oaks.
Oaks, yeah. We're talking with Mike Battaglia. And Mike, I guess if there's a surprise this year, it would be Patrick Biancone with Etu Indian, who just won the Fountain of Youth. And then he's got Sol Volante, who will either be in the Florida Derby or Louisiana Derby. Patrick was on the show last week. But I think coming into the year, I don't know if he was on any radar.
No, he wasn't. And neither one of these horses, although I will say that I thought both of them could have or should have been on in the February one, because the way they're both coming off of really good races. I think both these horses have a great shot. And the thing of it is they've got 2 different running styles. That Tay Indian, what a ride Florent Giroux put on him in the Fountain of Youth. From that 11 hole, it was the outside post. He gunned the horse to the front, and he really responded. And time before that, he was second to Tiz the Wall in the Holy Bull back on February the 1st. So this horse had already proven that he could run, but the Fountain of Youth was just a big race. And what happened was, too, is that Patrick's go-to rider, the guy that was riding both of the horses, that Panizzi, the Italian rider.
Luca Panizzi,
Luca Panizzi, he broke his shoulder. So Florent Giroux picks up the mount on Ete India and rides that kind of race. That was huge. Sol Volante really impressed me, running behind that Independence Hall, who was undefeated up to that time, and he just left him in the dust that day. So you got one horse that goes to the front, one that comes from off of it. Both of his horses are right now, to me, fit right there.
We're talking with Mike Battaglia. He is the man who sets the Kentucky Derby line. He is also the one that puts the line out right now on the early Derby wagering through Churchill Downs. And when we come back, we'll talk more with Mike, maybe a little bit about this dominance of Baffert and everything else that's going on that makes the Kentucky Derby so special. Stay with us. You're listening to The Horse Racing Show. Welcome back. I'm Kenny Rice. Thank you for tuning in to the Horse Racing Show. A great friend of mine. We go back, his family. We go back that long. Mike Battaglia joins us. Well-known, loved, respected, knowledgeable. He's got it all. He's got the speed. He can go the distance. And he has for years, from Latonia to now Turfway Park to Churchill Downs to Keeneland, setting the odds, calling the races. And we're talking Kentucky Derby because I guess everybody asks you, who do you like right now?
The speed is fading and the distance is getting shorter, Kenny. Let's put it that way.
Well, you know what has changed, though, among other things, a couple of big things I've noticed, Mike, this point system. I wasn't sure about the point system when it started at Churchill as opposed to money earned that would get you in the 20-horse field for the Derby. But it seems to be working, and I think one of the things is that a lot of the sprinters aren't getting those, getting the money in some of the races that would put them in where you knew they couldn't get a mile and a quarter. I mean, it's still a question for most of them, but I think that's been one of the biggest changes I've noticed in recent years.
I agree, and I think it was a good change. I really do, because you're right. We had horses, that the 2-year-old form just does not translate into 3-year-old form. It just doesn't. You have to come back and reprove yourself. You just because you were dominant as a 2-year-old, it doesn't make a bit of difference on the first Saturday in May. And a horse that won, we still give the horse that wins the Breeders' Cup Juvenile points, but it's not an automatic berth like it used to be.
Right.
And it's the sprint races just don't count as much, and they shouldn't. So I think I think you're right. I think that's a big change, and I think it was a really good change.
And with the exception of last year, of course, we know how all that worked out, and it would have been the favorite, would have, had it not been for the DQ of the Country House comes up at 65 to 1, but we've had favorites coming in. Maximum Security would have been the favorite, was the favorite, but we know how that worked out. But it's been a real good run of favorites right now, or pretty close to it.
Yeah, it really has been. Like I said, Baffert has been pretty. He was pretty much dominant, but of course last year he wasn't. But he still had horses in there, and you get Maximum Security. I'll tell you what, you mentioned his name, and the way he ran in Saudi Arabia on Saturday, that was huge. He was back behind horses.
Oh, it was great race.
It looked like Irad Ortiz was trying to float him out in the stretch and came back in on him, and he still came on and won that race. I thought it was a gutty performance. Great ride by Luis Saez and Craig. Congrats to them, and congrats to Steve Asmussen for the way he had Midnight Bisou ready.
She's
and Mike
ready.
Smith, she's not going to run in the Dubai World Cup, but she showed her grit. I heard that Mike Smith got fined for excessive use of the whip. Somebody told me.
He did, and it's several thousands of dollars. And the thing about this, and as we know, some of the horse racing problems are self-inflicted. I mean, you know that, and we've been fans of the sport, and we've covered the sport, and it's been a living for us for many years. But like this, I think if you just read that and you didn't see the race, you'd think that this guy's just beating the horse.
Yeah.
And it's not always the case. Plus, the whip is not like the whip that somebody would think of. The crop is what, I think is becoming more of a popular term. But, I just hated to see that being a little bit of a blemish on what was a great race and a great day and, a spectacular opening in Saudi.
Yeah, and Mike Smith does not abuse horses.
No, not at all.
He's been around a long time. And ask Steve Asmussen what he thought of the ride and how the filly came back. I think he would agree. So but it is what it is. A rule is a rule, and I don't have any. They did what they thought was right, but. To me, I didn't like it either.
Well, it gets tough, does it, when you start counting it? 1, 2, 3, how many?
I know.
Wait a minute,
really?
He switched. Is he trying to change leads? Wait, that's 3, 4. Was that 7 now? And it gets confusing, and like you say, it gets convoluted. But one thing that's not convoluted is Baffert is doing things. We've done 57 of these podcasts now, Mike. And I don't know if there's been maybe 5 shows where the name Baffert didn't surface. I don't know if there's ever been a dominance, and Wayne Lucas is the only guy in my lifetime. I wasn't around for the great days of Calumet, but Wayne Lucas is the only guy in my lifetime that it comes even close to what we're seeing with Baffert. Pletcher, obviously, he's had incredible meets and done some wonderful things too, but this Baffert Derby thing is fascinating to me.
It really is. He's been dominant, and it's just he knows how to get these horses ready. There's just no doubt about it. I always said that about Lucas. Wayne got horses ready for the big race, and it didn't matter how, but he had them ready. Some of the things he did, I mean, it was just unbelievable. So, I'd put those in the same category. And the thing of it is, they both had that personality about them, the outgoing personality and my white hair.
Well, when I'm in the paddock, I can look and I can see Baffert, Lucas, and you, just like that. Bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
Except one time I went up to Michael McDonald of the Doobie Brothers. No, I'm kidding. I've never met Michael McDonald. I just threw that in. Kenny Rogers. I saw Kenny Rogers there once. I did. I didn't meet him, but I saw him. Well, we're talking about, we'll take white hair at the Derby for 100,
What was the name of Kenny Rogers' first band? Kenny Rogers
and the first edition?
There you go.
Ruby, don't take your love to town.
Yeah, that was one of them. The first one was
my condition. I just dropped in to see what condition my condition was in.
I dropped in to see what condition my condition was in. Yeah, that was it.
Be sure to call us in right now. Mike Battaglia will be singing your requests. Gosh, we had so much fun in the NBC days for that run that we had of derbies and triple crowns and Breeders' Cups. And, I mean, At this time of the year, it's a little bit like everything else. Okay, now I'm kind of getting a little more and more excited. But when the Derby comes around, there still is nothing like it, no matter how many you've covered or been around. It's really just it's hard to describe. It is a great horse race, but it's also an event like none other, like few other in sports, maybe outside of like Super Bowl, Indy 500, Daytona 500 that I can think of.
Oh, yeah. I've been to every one since 1972. I've worked every one. I've never gone as a fan, but I've worked every Derby since 1972. I'm still doing that. I come in and work for Churchill for the day, so I really enjoy it.
And you've called the Derby before, and, that's got to be one of the highlights. I mean, that first Derby you called, there was a couple of pretty decent horses in it, as best I remember.
I can't remember. It might have been a Firmed and Alydar.
It was a Firmed Alydar, I believe, in 78, wasn't it? Wasn't that your first Derby call?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, a Firmed and Alydar. That was my first Derby. Yeah, it was great. It was unbelievable.
There is the way it's been marketed and the growth it has had over the years has really been fascinating to me. In the 30 years I've covered it, I remember when, it was pretty easy. You get a press pass, you pop in. Now everybody's coming in, and, the network and all that. It's a whole different, and now they're building stuff all around Churchill Downs. It's a whole new place. It's not your father's, or it's actually not your older brother's Churchill Downs anymore.
No, how about that hotel they're going to build right on the first turn there? And you could sit there in the morning with the balcony and watch the works. That's going to be unbelievable.
I bet the Derby. I bet that'd be a hard ticket Derby day, don't you?
You think?
Wonder what that balcony room Derby day will go for.
I don't know.
If I drop,
that'd be a tough one.
I'll drop your name as I always do.
Yeah, just tell them I said you were good for it.
Yeah. Hey, if I said, are there 4 horses out there that you think would have a shot? And I realize, the timing of it, we're a couple of months out, but is there 4 horses out there that you're really worth keeping an eye on as it progresses? Oh, yeah.
I think there's 4, maybe 60. It's just too early. Yes, there are. You have to look. I don't know why I'm not on the Dow, but he's going to have to prove it to me. So he's not in my top 4 right now at all. I really love the way that Sol Volante ran last time out in the Sam Davis. We'll have to see how that horse comes back and if the horse can do it again. But I really like that horse, and I think that horse. I think he's going to continue to move forward. The other being Cone horse, the Ete Indian, it just depends on how much speed there is in the race, So I felt so bad for Dale. He's just been so high.
Oh, Dale Romans,
and he just now the name's escaping me. Like
Dennis's Moment, who's not been able to have a moment in his last 2 races. Yeah.
No, I just felt. I mean, Dale trains our horse. He's trained, we got one in training with Dale, but he's trained horses for us for the last 10 years. And he doesn't know what happened. And I can't figure it out. I can see the horse not winning. I could see him not winning because that was a, speed favoring track and he was going to come from off the pace. But to run dead last like that, that's just so disappointing. I just felt so bad for him because he's been really high on Dennis's Moment. He had that bad luck 4 to 5 in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So
right out of the gate, it's over. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to say that I still have him in there, but I can't keep him in there. I just I think he's going to have to do too much too quickly now. So I've got the one being Cone horses. You have to keep looking at Tizzalaw. I mean, he, Barkley Tag, he's been there before. He's won the Derby. So I think Barkley's getting up there now, too, though, I'll tell you. But Tizzalaw, he's one of those horses that looks to me like he's moving forward. You have to be moving forward in every race when you go out there at this time of year. You have to move forward with every race. So I definitely think he's that kind of horse that he's moving forward. Billy Mott's got that modernist. The numbers aren't big, but just broke his maiden. He wins the Risen Star. That's another one that I think is kind of moving forward. Might be a little bit under the radar. Maxfield gets a lot of play. He hasn't had a start yet. I can't go for him. Independence Hall was the hot horse to me. he showed that I don't think he's a 1.25 mile horse. There's one more, this Honor AP horse. He had all he's done is break his maiden, but it's John Sheriff's, and I think he could move forward. I think he's another one that could move forward. And any of the Baffert horses. You just don't know which one's
just Baffert and all. Yeah.
I mean, he's got 4 of them in there, and they all 4 about look the same. I got them all 12, 12, 12, 12.
Yeah.
You know, with Nadal, I got 10-1. But 1,000 words, how can you not like him? He's undefeated, authentic. He's 2 for 2. He's got that. They put Charlatan in there. That he's got the horse that just broke his maiden at Santa Anita. He ran 6 furlongs and 108 and got a 105 buyer.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest buyer of any 3-year-old so far. Well, I don't know what to do with those kind of horses. It's just tough. It's going to sort itself out in the next couple months, but right now, to me, it's still it's up for grabs.
Mike, it's so good to catch up with you. Thanks for ironing all this stuff out, and we'll catch up again before the big race.
Sounds good, Kenny.
All right. Thank you, Mike Battaglia. More coming up here on the Horse Racing Show. Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. I'm Kenny Rice. Thank you for tuning in, be it on YouTube, one of the other outlets through radio, iTunes, Google Play, whatever. iHeartRadio, Stitcher, we're everywhere. Much like our guest, the esteemed veterinarian, Dr. Stuart Brown from the Haggard Equine Medical Institute in Lexington, Kentucky. Doctor, welcome in. So glad to have you on, Stuart. Thanks. You actually make a public appearance here. We don't get many people that come to this bunker, so thanks for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Did you have trouble finding it? Because people do.
You know, it's at least it's in a general neighborhood that I was familiar with.
I've been coming here for over a year, and I still get lost sometimes. You know, we're top secret show.
That's right. That's right. Keep it secluded.
Yeah. What is not, well, kind of, what is a little bit, it's not top secret, but still trying to figure out this new coalition. Right. Still in its infancy, I think. You're now a part of that. You were in Washington, D.C. just a few weeks ago. I just kind of want to ask you a little bit about the safety coalition and everything as it tries to move forward. Where is it now?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that's been really impressive in terms of my involvement here is the AEP has recently become, involved as a sponsor of the Thoroughbred Safety Coalition in terms of engagement on that effort. I think one of the things that's really impressive to me personally and being part of the industry and having been involved in a number of things, in terms of advocacy for the thoroughbred industry or for horse racing in general, has been that I'm impressed with the part that you've got a group of stakeholder racetracks who are for all intents and purposes, competitors in this space, right? For horses that compete at the highest level, and this group of racetracks, control over 85% of the graded stakes in North America, and they certainly recognize the challenges that I think the industry, faced in 2019 with all the things that have occurred, and have all looked at that situation and understood that while they might all be competitors in this space, it's important for them all to work toward common goals for improving the safety and the welfare of the horses and the athletes, the human athletes, as well as the equine athletes that are part of our sport. And they've looked to do that beyond, just the realm of just, certain aspects of it, say, for instance, medication, but also to look at things like safety concerns relative to condition of surfaces, looking at all the inspections that we certainly would do in terms of veterinary examinations, those kind of standards that we know that we can put in place across those group of coalition racetrack members that they look to bring to improve the landscape of identifying the at-risk horse or competitor in horse racing.
Stuart, it seems to me that one of the things, especially from reading some of the proposals and some of the things that are being implemented right now, is limiting the medication for younger horses, for 2-year-olds especially. Is that one of the primary focuses, is that this medication, especially for younger horses, so they won't be dependent on it, I guess?
I think one of the things about this approach is, one, it's very comprehensive, okay? So I think it's not just about medication. I think that's a component of it, obviously, how we care for the racing athlete, just like human athletes that need support and care from trainers and physicians. The same is true for the equine athletes, veterinarians, therapists, folks who provide that care for them to maintain them through exertional exercise like they would experience in time workouts or in racing, in order to care for them and take care of their aches and pains and injuries that could potentially occur there. And we're obviously looking at making sure that we keep them as healthy as we can optimally for their performance, but also for their safety. And so I think, you look at, while medication is a component of that, that's not the only part of that.
It seems to get the most attention
now. It does. And I think, in a lot of ways, it becomes a focal point with things like LASIX, And so I think LASIX use is one of those sort of lightning rod issues, and we've certainly wrestled with it here locally in our own backyard here in Kentucky on the Horse Racing Commission, to kind of look at, these kinds of activities relative to reform measures that maybe bring us to a better place or find a compromise, to where we are on that particular issue. Because whether we agree or disagree with that, certainly as veterinarians and as from the AEP, we recognize that LASIX is the best thing we have currently available to us to control EIPH or, upper respiratory hemorrhage, in the horse. And so, we recognize it ameliorates the symptoms, but it doesn't necessarily cure all the causes of that.
And is that, it's not a masking thing, is it?
No.
I mean, because you mentioned LASIX, it's almost, and I'm not trying to make light of anything here, but it's almost like screaming opioids. Right now in humans, people on the outside look at that and go, "What's this LASIX? What are you doctoring the horses up?"
And I think you bring up a really good point, Kenny. People have a difficult time too delineating between doping, and then medication use. Yeah. And we have therapeutic medication use, which is really well regulated in our industry. I mean, we do over 350,000 tests annually in the horse industry, with less than 97% of those are negative. So we have a very, very small percentage of positives, and of the positives we have the majority of those in the 95 percentile are going to be over therapeutic medication use. And so it's the things we use to care for the athlete, just like they would be caring for the human athlete that occurs in competition. And so we have a very stringent drug testing system that's in our industry that cares for looking out for the integrity of the sport, but also the safety of its participants. And so I think that's one of the things here that's somewhat being elevated in terms of, the messaging piece on, our industry, or all the things we are doing positively to impact safety in our industry. And I think that's an important part of, what the coalition members are also doing here, is to highlight those, but then to look at, areas in terms of potential reform, like you're pointing out, that help to bring us to a better place, because we certainly understand it's important for the public. I think the societal license for us to participate and to do the things we do in horse racing, is an important part of that. And we always want to be at the forefront of taking care and advocating for the welfare of the horse.
Yeah. We're talking with Dr. Stuart Brown from the Haggard Equine Medical Institute. Among his many achievements, he's won the Presidential Award from the American Association of Equine Practitioners. He has chaired the UK Gluck Equine Research Foundation, well respected at the University of Kentucky, known throughout the world. I don't know what you haven't done. You've been on the Racing Commission in Kentucky. Have I left out anything on the resume, Stuart? I mean, that's why you're so well-rounded, and I think that's a big reason, seriously, why you're on the coalition. And I know Kentucky Congressman Andy Barr. I kind of had a little bit of fun a couple of weeks ago saying, do we need to get politics involved? Anytime government gets involved, it almost is scary. Does government need to get involved with horse racing, or can Horse Racing's coalition kind of get this worked out itself?
Yeah, I think that's part of the advocacy piece, in terms of trying, I think one of the things that you definitely find relative to where the AEP positioned in most of its membership, along with a whole lot of other stakeholders in the industry, is the need to get to a place with uniformity of medication standards, uniformity of penalty phases. All those things I think are extremely important to the industry, and I think they speak a lot to governing itself. And so it's all been about what's the best vehicle for which to accomplish uniformity across the 38 racing jurisdictions that exist in the United States. And in some respects, there's the advocacy part that you're talking about at the federal level with looking for governmental intervention. But then I think that more impressively, have been these this thing like the Thoroughbred Safety Coalition, and where the industry itself is trying to emerge and to try to lead itself and to institute those reforms. And so across those racing jurisdictions, one of the interesting things about that is you accomplish that in a lot of different ways. And in some ways, it may be done through the executive branch of government. Some places it may be done through house rules by the racetracks of those respective states. The coalition, members in this group that are working through these challenges now cut across, a pretty good demographic of all those experiences. And so they're looking to come together and institute those measures at their member-owned racetracks in order to institute the kinds of reforms that would lead to uniformity, not just in medication, but against standardization too. Right. Things like, how we inspect horses, how we look at horses, how the private practitioners work with the regulatory veterinarian, so that, there's a lot of crosstalk that occurs there, and we're sharing information about the care of those horses so that we consistently are evaluating them as they go into competition.
We're talking with Dr. Stuart Brown. More with the Good Doctor when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching and listening to the Horse Racing Show. Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. I'm Kenny Rice. Dr. Stuart Brown from the well-known and respected Haggard Equine Medical Institute in Lexington, Kentucky is our guest. He is on that coalition that is helping to reform, rewrite, refocus some things in horse racing. He's also a little busy right now because this happens to be the breeding season, which is as important as the Kentucky Derby, not to racing fans that are around the country that want to know who's going to win the big race, but these are future Derby runners and Oaks runners and whatever out there.
That's right.
So at Haggard Equine Medical Institute, and you especially being one of your expertise in reproduction, do you sleep much right now?
This is not a time of year that there is a lot of sleep. That's a pretty precious commodity, so to speak. Whether you're farm managers here or foaling attendants or veterinarians that are servicing this industry, we have the great fortune to work here in this 5-county region of Central Kentucky, which is really the factory floor of the thoroughbred industry, and gives birth to so many of the future champions that populate thoroughbred racing throughout the world.
What is the most concern of you as a veterinarian working with the farms for the breeders themselves? People say, well, it's just a natural thing, is it? They're just nature. They're horses and they're giving birth. If it were only that simple.
One of the things I think that's really unique about the mare herself, and in terms of the reproductive aspect of that, is, we understood a lot, in terms of the domestication of the horse, that they lived in the wild and they were oftentimes prey animals. And so their protection against predators was to flee. And so consequently, they've evolved over time where this really critical window associated with delivery and foaling is very unique for the mare. And when she enters in the stage 2 of labor and delivery, that's a very short and explosive period of about 20 minutes. And it was done by design so that the mare would deliver the foal in a rapid period of time so she'd be able to stand up and protect the foal, which our thoroughbred foals, just like other domestic horses in particular, are very precocious. So within 2 hours of their delivery, they're up and nursing, and they often foaled in the cloak of darkness so that they were protected by not being able to be seen well.
I wondered about that because a lot of them are
protectively and evolutionarily, it has given them the ability to sort of be able to foal, because the mare was most vulnerable when she was down in delivery. But within 20 minutes, she's up, standing, and being able to protect and fend off predators for her foal in nature. And even today, we see that protective mechanism has continued to pervade, so that most of the domestic horses that we deal with today will foal in the evening hours. And so it leads to a lot of sleepless nights because we're cautiously watching, because we also know that explosive 20-minute window of delivery, if there's anything that goes wrong, we need to intervene quickly in order to help protect the mare and her foal.
Now, do you get out there, or does somebody from Haggard Equine Medical get out there to the farms as they're being foaled, like the doctor on call that would go to the woman in the maternity ward?
Most of us have relationships with a lot of the farms, and and here we have such incredibly good foaling attendants that for the most part the foalings that I go to are the ones when somebody identifies a problem. Right. And I usually tell my clients, the only bad phone call you make is the one you don't make. Right. And so I'd rather be halfway to a foaling and somebody call and say, hey, we're okay, doc, and you can go back home and go to bed, than not get there in time so that we can intervene, because many times we can correct some of the more simple malpresentations in order to wind up having a successful outcome.
Does it ever not cease to amaze you? I mean, I've seen it maybe 2 or 3 times a foal.
Yeah.
and how quickly the little fellas pop up and their legs look like they're ready to fall back down. But it amazes me, and I know you've done this hundreds of times.
It's a remarkable thing. I don't think I've ever tired of that. And I grew up here, much like yourself, and wound up, that was one of the things I did to put myself through high school and college, and to help me go to vet school and do all those things. And that was a big part of, what I grew up here around doing. I don't think I ever tire from, because that's just a really remarkable experience and sight, and I think we here in Central Kentucky, we get to share that experience with a whole lot of people that come here from around the world to visit and to sort of see that true miracle of, birth of these thoroughbred foals we have every year.
Before I let you go, I have to mention, and I'm not going to never give your number out, but if you call Dr. Stuart Brown at Haggard Equine Medical Institute, you might hear a familiar voice that's not his. It's of the Hall of Fame basketball coach John Calipari at the University of Kentucky. Which leads me to this. You have a friendship, and also you're a big UK basketball fan, and now in this month where we're trying to figure out 2 months away from who's going to win the Derby, how are we going to figure out in the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks, how the basketball season goes?
Yeah, Coach Cal's got them rounding back into shape again. We've got Emmanuel Quickly and Nick Richards and Ashton Hagens and Tyrese Maxey there playing. So what a great group that's kind of come together for him, much like his teams have matured, in years past. But it's a great process. He talks about the ability to succeed, to proceed, and so it's really great to kind of be a part of that program and to sort of and you can't grow up here and it not be a part. He's a part of your blood if you grow up in Central Kentucky and in terms of UK basketball.
Well, that's the one thing is you travel and you've been all over the world, and then my travel. Most people, the first thing they ask me, have you been to the Kentucky Derby?
Right. Yeah.
And then the second thing they'll ask about basketball.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is probably better than alcohol, cigarettes, and marijuana.
Two great.
Some of the other things that this state's known for.
Right? Yeah, that's right.
But and I would liken it to this. There is still the excitement and anticipation right now for all basketball fans, there is all horse racing fans, that this might be the year.
Yeah, you get into this time of year, and it's always so exciting. It's so fun to follow, in terms of the tournament run and where seeding wind up, kind of placing teams, and then you find those deep run Cinderella teams, that this time of year that are just coming into their own.
Like that 65-1 country house. You never know.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We all love a dark horse in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stuart, I can't thank you enough because he's a working man right now. He's actually in between checking all the farms. It is the height of the breeding season right now going on, and I really appreciate you coming in.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Dr. Stuart Brown, well known. He's respected throughout the world, as is Haggard Equine Medical Institute. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir.
Now you know where it is. We'll bring you back. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right. More coming up on the Horse Racing Show right after this. Welcome back in. Thanks for listening again this week. Episode 57, if you're keeping score on YouTube, of this, the Horse Racing Show. Interesting day. Two guys that are very busy but taking time out, Dr. Stuart Brown and Mike Battaglia, to talk with us because it is the season, and you heard from Dr. Brown, who's a big basketball fan, close friend of John Calipari's at the University of Kentucky. So, you got these two seasons right now in the state of Kentucky. Basketball, obviously heating up in March, and this is the breeding season, and we're getting ready for the Derby. It's a confluence of excitement.
I've never been more excited in my life.
I'm trying to calm you down. Calm down in there, Ben Chaffins.
I'm trying my best.
What was that you wanted to know? Do they have like the pink and the blue ribbons, or do they know in advance if it's going to be a boy and a girl? Is that the question you wanted to ask me, Ben?
Yeah, that sounds. How'd you remember?
Yeah, you walk in, it's crazy. The stallion walks in, and they're all in there and goes, "Hey, that's my boy, that's my girl." No, but it's fascinating. If you have a chance to ever see it, if you could ever see it live, and I've been privileged to do that a few times, but if you can see it, just a video of it, the birth of a thoroughbred is amazing. How quickly they are up, and they're trying to stand, and they're shaky, and then they get standing, and their mom is up, and they start nursing. It really is. It's a moment that even makes cynical, mixed martial arts loving fighting guys kind of well up just a little bit. That is a special time.
You're a softie at heart.
Yeah, I think Dayton's going to do well in the tournament. There, that's my pick.
Uh-oh.
I don't think they're going to win it all, but I think they're going to do well. That's my outside side. I think Kansas could win it all. That's who I would pick right now.
I'd have to agree.
Derby, I got no clue. I don't know if anybody does. But as Mike Battaglia said, you can start naming them off and figuring them out.
When in doubt, bet on Baffert.
That's it. Bet on Baffert. More next week, getting closer to the Derby, of course. Mike Battaglia, thank you. Dr. Stuart Brown from the Haggard Equine Medical Institute. Thank you so much for making this another wonderful show. And thank you, Mr. Thomas Kenny. Thank you, Ben Chaffins.
Thank you, Kenny.
And thank you for tuning in to the Horse Racing Show. We look forward to talking with you again next week. Until that time, I'm Kenny Rice. Take care, everyone.